Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Starbright podcast. I hope everyone is doing pretty well. Drow, Mouse, both good.
All good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Our fourth Liv, as you guys know, has a child that she takes very good care of and is in no danger of her ever doing anything bad with. No, she's just making sure they go to
She
school.
is not putting
She
them
is not
down.
putting the
No,
child to
no,
sleep.
no child euthanasia here. So she will be with us hopefully in a little bit. I have just a couple things to go over here before we begin. Uh, First is I know there's going to be, especially for the first couple episodes, there's going to be some technical issues, right? If you guys have any feedback for us, please just keep letting us know. I have tried to rebalance the audio levels between myself. I've lowered myself a little bit. I've raised everyone else a little bit. I've raised Mouse particularly up higher. So hopefully everyone hears her better during this episode. And I hope no one has problems hearing Drow or Liv when she gets in here as well. But audio balancing is really fucking annoying when it comes to producing stuff. But if anyone has any issues, please don't hesitate to let us know in that Twitch chat. Hi, Son and Jade. I see you guys chatting there. Let us know if there are any audio issues. Let us know if there is balancing, audio between us. If I have to move things up or down, please just let us know. And once those settings are finally good one day, hopefully, then I won't have to touch them again. But it's hard because we're doing this over Discord. We're not all sitting in the same studio. I don't have like an audio DAC with a compressor that I can automatically balance audio levels on or anything like that. So we're just gonna have to fudge the numbers until everyone hears everyone pretty well. So hopefully we'll get that working out. Just keep giving us feedback, guys, and I'm sure we will make that work eventually at some point. Oh, hey, Di, see you there in there too. And then moving on to housekeeping issue number 2. This is specifically about scheduling now. The fifth episode, according to the schedule we have right now, just so you guys are aware, the fifth episode would be Friday, August 4th. We are going to not have to do that episode on Friday, August 4th. The fifth episode will instead be 2 weeks after that on the 18th, because I will not be around on the 4th, so I will not have my computer gear with me, and I will not be available. The reasons why, and this is kink related, so I'll go over this. If anyone's ever heard of the SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism, the closest analogy is Ren fairs. They put on Ren fairs all around the country. They're not really Ren fairs. People dress up. You come up with your own persona, and there's all different sorts of events doing different things. And then the biggest event that the SCA puts on during the year is called Pensic, Pennsic. Takes place in Pennsylvania, Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, every year during the first 2 weeks of August. 13,000 people all camping out for 2 weeks, all dressing up, all sorts of classes and events and all different sorts of fun stuff to go look at. There's like a mile square marketplace. There's tons of arts and exhibits on different things, and then there's tons of parties and other things. And then it also happens to inadvertently be one of the largest gatherings of kinksters in the states. During the time period it goes on, there's a whole bunch of munches. Some of the parties at nights, there's a bunch that are kink themed, including several with sex dungeons and all kinds of fun exhibitions and suspension plays and all kinds of Iron Cross stuff, like all kinds of fun stuff. And
Fun,
I will
fun.
be there. I will be there for the 2 weeks. And if anyone's in and around the Pennsylvania area wants to check out that event, I highly recommend it. It's great fun. Camping is fun for 2 weeks if anyone likes camping. You don't have to go for the full 2 weeks, obviously. But then, it's the best time of my life. I live to go back every year. And then, like I said, it's an enormous gathering of seen people as well. And it's just it's a great event, and I recommend it. And I will be probably already slightly inebriated and at a party at that time, Friday night. And obviously, I won't have my computer gear with me, so I will not be around on that day. And maybe if I'm lucky, I'll be with someone special. I don't know. Who knows? It's a fun event. But just so everyone knows that fifth episode will instead be the 2 weeks after that on the 18th. So just be aware there's no episode that week is really what I'm coming up with. But then also attend that event if you can, because it's a lot of fun. So we're gonna move on. I think Liv is gonna be in momentarily if I'm not mistaken. Uh
Awesome.
But we will jump into the topic of the day, which I know Mouse is very excited about because this is, well, her
This is where
existence
I
essentially.
shine.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if you guys remember from last week's episode, this week's episode is all about brats and bratting, which is a very specific thing in the scene. And I think a lot of people here, including Liv, who just jumped in, can probably identify as this. But we're going to start off simple. How do you define brats? How do you define bratting? Like, what are we really talking about here? And I think that's what we're going to launch into to get into this episode. I'll kick off here only because I think I have a pretty good, very very basic definition. I mean, I'm going to say there's a lot of different types of bratting, a lot of different types of brats, and well, I mean, I would break it down to just a few, just to be simple. I know Mouse is going to want to really define this, which is fine. But I would say bratting, in a very simple definition, is all about opposition. Now, it can be opposition to specific things. It can be opposition in a specific way, but it is all about someone being. Well, I don't want to use the term difficult, but that is really what it comes down to. Someone that doesn't want to do what they're supposed to, which is a very dumb way of putting it, I guess. But that's how I would define that. Drow as the other. Dom, in here, you want to give your opinion on this one?
Actually, I agree with you. I wouldn't say difficult. But in essentially the same terms, like, yeah, no, it's a whole different form of the subtype, I guess. Because you have your submissive, regular subs. You have all, like, there's just a blanket term essentially. But with brats, it's interesting to say the least. I I mean, I've had a few brats in my time during the kink community, and it it boils down to mostly for me. Um, sorry, words. I've also been working for 16 hours, so I'm tired.
Feel that.
It's been all day. Anyways, so like I wouldn't say defiance either. It's just basically how would I put it? Yeah, in a way, it's like being a little bit more defiant than like your average submissive, because you have your service subs, you have regular, just normal submissives. Like, there's all sorts of different branches, but brats are a whole lot different, and we all love them. We do. They're great. Anyways.
Yeah, we are. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
At least you acknowledge.
Yes, I do.
Hey, I didn't say they weren't.
Oh, don't worry. I've already got notes for both of you. We're gonna go over this.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, no.
We're in trouble.
Go on, Liv.
Oh yeah.
Liv, I really want to hear. Oh, it is. It is. I'm gonna be full brat mode because I don't feel good, so I am extra sassy today.
Yeah,
Liv, I especially want to hear your opinion on what bratting is. I actually asked the guys to go first this time because I wanted everyone to give their opinions on what bratting is before we actually launched into what bratting is from the perspective of who's been a brat for a long time.
Bratting with Mouse 101.
Oh, we're gonna have a learning experience, I assure you. I will force it down your throat. You will find out.
And we will all take it.
You will take it. Thank you. All right, Liv, I want your opinion. You're new to the scene. You're new to bratting, and you were talking to me at the end of last episode about how you weren't exactly sure where you fit in the brat community.
Yeah.
What do you think bratting is? How would you define it? Why did you feel that you don't really fit the brat role?
I feel like because a lot of, like I said, like because there's so much stigma around bratting, as you said, which honestly I never knew, because like I said, I'm just so new to this community. So it was like, for me, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to explain this because I'm also not feeling the greatest tonight. So, but I will try my best. But, so there's always been so much stigma around it and everything like that. So, I kind of always figured that, that whole, it is about being sassy and stuff, but like kind of like figuring out the difference between being mean and bratting. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
something I'm definitely going to talk about tonight.
and that's, I think, kind of like where, not that I've ever been like mean or anything like that, but it's just, I don't really know what it is. Like, I say that I'm a brat, but then it's like, I don't know if I even do it right, or if I'm even doing bratting at all, or if I'm even considered a brat. It's just, it's kind of just,
You are definitely a brat. I will go into why later, but it's really good that you actually don't really know, because there is such a disparity in what the definitions look like. As
well,
we've seen
exactly.
from all three of you, there's been very different opinions on what bratting looks like. But I
Yeah.
have a bit of a more cohesive answer that will cover all of this, and I hope all of you will agree, and we
Yeah.
will see where we go from there. Because I think that's one of the big challenges is people, even in this community, don't really have a good idea of what a brat is on the most basic level.
Exactly. And that's like, I'm like so stuck on it because like I know deep down I am, but at the same time, like I don't know how to express that to, and like, it's hard for me like to decipher between bratting and because like I also have borderline personality disorder, so like it not that it's just different, and it's hard for me. Like I know that that's not bratting when like when I'm in an episode or whatever, but I don't know. It's really hard for me to decipher like when I'm actually bratting, if I'm actually bratting, if I'm doing it right, if I'm, you know,
By
doing
the
it
time we're
properly,
done
a
today,
sense.
I think you might have a better idea. I'm hoping that
I
this will
know.
be the case for you,
I
especially
really,
if you are
really
so new
was.
to this.
Yeah, I really was not feeling well at all today, but I was like, you know what? This is the one episode that I'm like super excited for, so I'm just gonna push through because I really want to learn more about this. Because I just like, yeah, I'm so confused about the whole thing, honestly. Like,
It was pointed out to me today that I have far more of a reputation as a brat in the Facebook community than I actually knew that I had.
yeah,
I actually had no idea I had such a reputation. Somebody pointed it out to me today, and I was like, "Oh, good.
Well, give us your overall. Give us what you think
Okay."
defines that to everybody.
yes,
Bratting at the most basic level is playing. We are bantering, we are playing with you. It's not necessarily a defiance thing, although it is, but it's just the, slightly pushing away, like, I'm not going to do that. It's just making everything a game. We all have had that one friend that walks into the room and goes, "What's up, bitch?" And that's how they greet you.
yep,
That's bratting at its most basic level. And one thing I want to make very clear, bratting is not strictly a BDSM behavior. It is
hmm,
something that you can just have as a personality. It's
hmm,
not gender specific, it's not BDSM specific. Bratting is just a playful, bantery personality, but it's
hmm,
also a behavior. You do not have to be a brat to brat. And this is another thing that I think was a misconception that you guys had.
yep,
Bratting is not
definitely.
its own specific branch.
And
Bratting covers the entire sub spectrum. Every single type of sub can engage in bratting behavior, and I'm going to go over why tonight and what that looks like.
yeah, I think that's a lot of where my issue is because like I said, there's so much stigma around that and everything like that. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, well, if I'm
A
not considered a
misunderstanding.
bratty sub, then
You are what I would consider a bratty little. I think you
yeah,
lean more little, and I'm going to go over
yeah,
why I use that specific terminology too.
yeah,
I have specific terminology I use for this because I think it's a very important way to differentiate how different brats will behave and how to interact with them.
yeah, yeah,
I'd say my definition covers them being able to be everything else as well. But then mine
yeah,
was so basic, just being about opposition.
Yours was all about opposition and defiance, and I think that that is part of why there is a negative stigma about brats
No,
because
I didn't. I don't mean
it's
that in a
not
negative way.
just No, I know you don't, but the thing is, when you say that kind of thing, people assume that there are negative connotations to those words, and that's not inherently true. Bratting, especially from bratty littles, it's usually not mean-spirited, it's usually not defiance.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, little pranks, it's little jokes,
Yeah.
a little jab you get with a little smirk on your face. It's playful at
Yeah.
its essence, and there are brats who play meaner, and this is okay if this is the dynamic that you have. Because
Yeah.
another big thing we have to talk about is bratting versus bitchiness, because there
Yeah.
are people who identify as brats that I would consider to not be brats.
Or
They
just
are
using
being
it as
a
an
bitch.
excuse.
Yes, there are people who think that they can call themselves a brat and use that to abuse other people, which
No.
is something that is a very big problem in the community, and I think we need to do a better job of calling that out. We
Yeah.
see when doms are misbehaving and we call out poor behavior in doms. But I think that it's time that we also have to point out when brats are not bratting, they're just being mean.
I
Yeah.
think
There is a difference.
the first time we spoke, I think we had a conversation about that because there is such a thing called oppositional defiant disorder, and there are people with it
Yes.
that will call themselves brats when no, they are. It does not matter what you're doing; they are going to act in an oppositional manner regardless. It's actually this links, since you brought up this topic, it actually links back to last week's episode on consent, because anything that takes away your ability to say no, I don't like this, I don't want to do this anymore, whether or not you're a sub or a dom, doesn't matter what position you are in the dynamic here, is bad. And if someone can't control their behavior to where, like, I can't come up to a brat and say, like, I don't, please don't brat on this, I don't like this, that's enough on this is important to me, and someone can't say, okay, I'll take you. This doesn't have to be a game.
Yes.
This is not a game. If someone still has that word there, OPDD, they have to be oppositional to you. Then that
it's problematic.
Yeah, because you're not consenting to that anymore, and they can't control their behavior.
I will add the caveat that you can't necessarily consent to somebody's personality. Some people are just playful, and we would recognize them as bratty. And where I come into a problem with this is somebody will be like, well, I didn't consent for you to brat to me, but that's just the person's personality. They can't really turn it off. You chose to engage with them, and that's just who they are.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can ask them to not engage with you. Personally, I am a very, very playful, sassy person. It's very, very uncommon to run into me and me actually be serious for even 5 minutes. It won't happen. I'm always cracking a joke, making a jab. And the difference is, if somebody says, hey, I'm not really in the mood to play right now, okay, I will tone it back, or I will disengage from this person. If somebody's really like harsh and mean to me about it, I just won't talk to them again, because clearly they don't appreciate me for who I am, and that is their right. They have every right. However, I think that there is a misunderstanding that bratting is simply a BDSM behavior. This is why I brought this up. It is not a BDSM behavior. It is not a kink behavior. It is oftentimes a personality.
Yeah.
Some of us are just built sassy, and that's just who we are. So we didn't really choose the brat life. We were born to be brats. That's just who we are. And we come into the kink community, and we aren't just brats. Like primarily I am a brat, but I also have other roles within BDSM. When you talk to a brat, almost every brat will tell you, well, I'm a primal brat, or I'm a baby brat, or I'm a bratty little, or I'm a brat, but I really only want to, I don't actually want to, get my daddy mad. I want to do what he says. I just want to make it a little bit hard, or I want to do what he wants. I want to make him happy. And you would see that as a bratty service sub. They just want to make you happy, but they want to play to do it. And that's the thing. I think that people don't necessarily understand that brats aren't necessarily choosing to be brats. Some brats, it is just their personality, whereas other brats, it's something they choose to do to get a certain reaction. And it's more so a behavior than it is a role that you play.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to everyone? Does everyone see what I'm saying here?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Jarrell, what about you? You on the same page here, or you have any disagreements with what I'm saying? Did
Maybe he walked away.
Oh, he muted. I apologize. I didn't check.
I'm doing this a screaming child. No, I'm on the same page.
Okay. I want to make sure everyone's on the same page with this, because it kind of branches off into one of the next things I want to talk about is bratting versus bitching, what that looks like and what the difference is. Is everyone on the same page with that? We want to have this direction now, or do we have any more discussion on what bratting is?
I think
we
we're okay
generally
for right now.
understand.
I think we're okay for right now. Yeah.
Anyone in
I
the
got the
audience
basics
who's
of it.
listening in have questions? I actually want to check my Facebook page real quick because I threw up a post right before I came in here asking if there are any questions. Nope, no questions. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is, of course, bratting versus bitching. And I'm going to say right now, if you're doing anything that is mean-spirited, anything that is intentionally mean, anything that you know is insulting and something that will upset the other party, you are not bratting. You are being a bitch and you need to stop. It is not okay. If it happens in front of me, I will call you out. This is not something I allow in my server. It's not something I allow people to do in front of me.
Yeah.
This is not okay. If you are repeatedly being told that you are being too much, and I'm not talking to like a little bit, like if people are telling you that you're being too much, you need to tone it down, you're being mean, you're burning bridges, you're not bratting. You're not burning bridges like that all over the place if you're being playful.
Yeah.
If your version of play is burning that many bridges, you need to stop and reassess and think about what you're doing that is causing people to feel uncomfortable around you, because bratting shouldn't make people feel that uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. You're
No,
playing a
definitely.
game. It is banter. It is fun. It is lighthearted. It is you just playing to play. You don't want to actually hurt any feelings.
Mhm.
When I go into a situation, I might say, I'm not afraid of you. But I have seen other, so-called brats say something like, why do you suck so much at this? Why try to be
Yeah.
personal like that? Why try
Yeah.
to do that? I don't understand. Like, what was the benefit of that?
That's legitimately rude.
I'm choosing to say, I am not afraid of you. It's about me and me not being afraid rather than you suck. Now, if
Yeah.
I had a rapport with a dom where I could say that, it'd be different. If I knew that they were okay with it, I tested the waters, we'd had, conversations. They
Yeah.
wanted me to be a little bit meaner, it'd be one thing.
Yeah.
But this is especially true on Facebook. I see this between Facebook admin all the time. People will be like, "Oh my god, I'm just too much of a brat for them. They can't handle it." No, you're probably not. You're probably just being a bitch. Or I will be on a dom's Facebook profile and, having a conversation with them, and some other brat comes in and is like picking a fight, thinking they're backing up, and they're just being fucking mean for no reason.
Yeah, one of our
Like-
one of our one of our Twitch chatters, Kill Me King Harold, good friend of mine. There's a big difference between being a playful bitch and being a real bitch. Some people like the shame, which is definitely true. It's one thing if someone's like asked for it and is like, yeah, please make fun of me. I enjoy that.
Some doms, they don't get to the primal side until I've actually gotten on their nerves, so they want me to be a little bit meaner. And that's fine, because I definitely have a primal kink, and I will absolutely do that if that's what they need.
Right, but that's definitely something you talk. You don't just jump into that
Yes.
and be mean to
Yes.
someone.
It's where communication comes in.
Bratting
Exactly.
as a behavior versus bratting as a kink, this is where the difference is. At baseline, bratting is just playing. However, in kink, if you're actively in a scene or, this is something you've talked about with your partner, you can intensify things or make them a little bit more harsh. Primal brats in particular tend to be very physical, shoving, wrestling, in some cases I've heard of smacking being bratting, and I would not encourage that by any means, unless this is something that you're actively engaged in with your partner and this is something you're both okay with.
Yeah.
But things like primal bratting, I will go over these subtypes later and why I divided them this way. Primal brats tend to be very physical. When I'm with a primal partner, we wrestle, we, fight, there's scratching. Primal hunts, you can brat in a primal hunt easily. All you have to do is taunt them. You're not just running away, you're not just afraid, you're being a problem. You are, taunting them, teasing them. And that's the kind of thing that within reason you could be mean, because all you're doing is intensifying the primal hunt at that point. But you have to have had this prior conversation for that to be okay.
Definitely.
Bitching, the difference is bitching is you're just being mean for no good reason. And this is something that we really need to watch out for in the community because these are the brats that are giving us a bad name.
Yeah.
There's fake doms, and I will say it right now. Somebody asked me about this week on Facebook. There are also fake brats.
Yeah.
We have to be very careful because these are the people who give us a bad name. These are the reasons we have stigma. Because people don't understand that somebody being a bitch to you for no reason and calling themselves a brat, that is not what a brat looks like.
Yeah,
A
definitely.
brat is somebody who, my policy with bratting, and this is actually something I spoke about this week on Facebook as well. I hate the words make me. I think it's a terrible trope.
I saw
I
that
think it is
post.
harmful. I think it is harmful to the bratting world as a whole. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but my goal is I should never have to say the words make me. If I'm saying that, I have failed as a brat. If I've had
Yeah.
to say make me, my behavior isn't making you want to make me. I should make you want to make me do things without ever having to say the words.
Yeah.
Like the saying you're not an alpha if you have to say you're an alpha.
Yeah.
You're not doing a good job bratting if you have to say the words make me.
Yeah.
And I will die
Exactly.
on that hill. I will die on that hill. I know, Drow, you probably saw my post too. It went around the admin community pretty well. I hate the words make me. I think it is a terrible trope. I think it is harmful for bratting because make me is a demand.
Yes.
And as a sub, I don't want to make demands.
No.
Make me also closes off the option for the dom in question to back away without admitting defeat.
Yeah.
I want to make this fun. Make me is not banter. If I, in place of make me, you could say things like, I don't know, what if I don't? It gives them a chance to say something, it gives them a chance to back out without declaring loss, it gives them a chance to do something that's not physical. And I think it's really important that make me, some people argue it has its place. I just don't think it's beneficial. I hate seeing make me stickers and stuff to represent brats. I think it's damaging to the community. I really do not like the words make me. Maybe it has a place for some people. Maybe that's something they enjoy. Maybe it really brings out the primal in their dom. I don't know. Maybe it's different for other brats, but I hate the words make me. And I think that it's something that we really shouldn't use to represent the bratting community.
The way that you just explained that, like, actually makes, like, a lot of sense, and it's, like, it's just it's kind of a cool way to, like, express that and stuff like that, but also, like, you know, that I never really thought of it that way, so
Yeah, it's what I was always told in school was when you're writing a story, show me, don't tell me. If
yeah.
I have to tell you to make me, I am failing as a brat, and this is not a good dynamic.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we're not syncing up. And at that point, I would just stop. Like, what's the point? If I have to tell you to make me, the game is not fun. It's dead. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's very fair.
Most of the Dons I've spoken to are anti-make me as well.
Hmm.
I'm not going to say this is across the board, but a lot of people that I've spoken to, especially who are Doms, dislike make me for the same reason. Where do you go from there? You can't do anything else but give the brat what they want, or you have to admit defeat.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
I've been with people that have used the phrase "make me," but it was always in that context of it's an in-person physical like trigger for
Yeah,
more physical play,
yeah.
specifically for that.
right. And that's the thing. It's a trigger for more physical play. What if the Dom isn't in the mood for physical? What if they want out? What if they don't want to, take the loss and they feel like they're pressured into it? I just feel like true bratting should be more bantery, and make me ends the banter. It's a full stop. At that point, you either have to go physical or you have to take the action that the brat is requesting you to do or demanding you to do, actually, because make me is not a request, it is a demand.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, it's really missing the point of what bratting is. If you're using make me, it's stopping the banter, it's stopping the play, and you're giving a command to your Dom to do what you want them to do. I just don't like it. I don't see it fitting within the realm of bratting. And I think that it is overall harmful.
We have a
I
couple
feel like
people,
there's much
including
better words to use.
we have a
Hmm?
couple people, including Sapphic Honey Spanx in the server, all saying that they agree with you on this issue.
I'm glad
Yeah.
because I thought this might be a controversial one, but after posting it on Facebook, I was surprised at how many people agreed with me.
Yeah, like I said, when I saw that post, it was like it was something that I'd never really thought about because again, being so new to the whole bratting and stuff, but I was like reading through it and I was like, huh, this is like a very interesting take on why this is why it shouldn't be used in the community. And it was like, I
Yeah.
don't know, it was really cool to like be able to learn something like that
There
because,
is nothing that is a personal pet peeve to me more than, being on Etsy and finding brat paraphernalia and all of it is make me little hearts. And I'm like, I
mm,
just want to gouge out my eyeballs. Please don't do this to me.
I mean,
yeah,
ultimately, as was mentioned in last week's episode, everything can mean different things to different people. I mean, I've never had an issue with it, but then it was always used in that specific context, and the people I was with always knew that I didn't have a problem with it. But
Yes.
I totally
yeah,
understand where you're coming from, and I totally agree that it's probably is vastly overused and used in a way that kind of shuts down the dynamic or shifts it
I
in a
think
way without
I think
consent.
this is a good opportunity to talk about another topic too, online bratting versus offline bratting, and how you do have to know how to switch between the two because in an online bratting situation, you can't just keep pushing until you get a physical response. You
yeah,
have to read the room much better. You have to understand, you have to have a good understanding of like what is possible. What is your goal when you're bratting? Are you just playing around? You just want the banter? You want the verbal wordplay? Cool. That's great. But a lot of DOMs I have spoken to have this idea that the outcome needs to be submission, which again, I think is wrong. I don't think the outcome of every bratting scenario needs to be submission for a variety of reasons. One of those being that implies that the only reason your personality is valid is to submit, which, trust me, I will get very upset if I hear somebody say that to me again. I actually did have an altercation with somebody about that. I don't feel like that's okay. The end result of every bratting situation should not be submission. But in an online situation, you have to understand that the likelihood of the altercation that you're having ending in a physical, make me event is very unlikely. So you have to read the room very carefully. You have to constantly do a quiet vibe check to make sure that you haven't overstepped because it's much harder to brat online. And I think some people who might be more used to bratting in person may not necessarily be as good at making this transfer to online play. And some people who have only played online may not be very good at making the transfer to real life because real life there is a lot more, physical element to that. But with online bratting, it's a lot of it goes back to wordplay, malicious compliance. Malicious compliance is a huge thing for me in bratting in real life, in person, and online. Malicious compliance happens to be my forte as a brat. Anyone who's actually had long conversations with me has probably ended up in a long loop where I did exactly what they told me to, just the opposite of what they wanted. I will, lead people in a circle back to the original point just to screw with them. I'm very good at distraction. I'm very, very good at changing the subject and nobody realizing that I changed the subject. These are things that I do that people don't necessarily realize until later that I did to mess with them. And for me, that's part of the fun of online bratting is you can do things differently than you would in real life. I would not be able to pull off some of the stuff that I do and some of the long-winded little games that I do in person that I do online. And you do have to be able to make these switches.
mm-hmm.
You cannot brat the same way in person as you do online. And it is a very different game. And I think that we need to acknowledge that more. If
Yeah,
you are expecting every online or every online bratting episode to end in submission, you're going to be disappointed.
yeah,
And it is just a different way to play. You have to learn to read the room a lot better when you're playing online.
That's absolutely true. I mean, as you mentioned, I think people having problems swapping back and forth and just not realizing, whether in person or online. A lot of that does come down to experience, right? And hopefully, anyone who's listening, if you're doing stuff in person or online, and it's part of the reasons why we're doing these podcasts. Help educate yourself. Know that you need to be checking in on the vibe. Know that you need to be able to set those boundaries and find where those boundaries are, and know that you got to do that. Some people just don't have the experience with social skills to
Yes.
do that effectively until they've had a
The vibe
chance.
check is so important in bratting. If you're ever even slightly concerned you might have overstepped in person or online, pause. Hey, are you okay? I want to make sure that, I didn't say anything that's too much. That wasn't my intent. I want to be very clear that I never intended to, say X, Y, Z. I want to make sure you're okay. Okay, so this is our boundary now. Cool. I will not press there again. I'm so sorry. You have to
Yeah.
learn how to you have to learn how to apologize. You have to learn how to do the vibe check and make sure everything's okay. Don't just assume that things are okay. If you get even the slightest hint of social cues changing, you should do a vibe check and make sure things are okay.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very easy to overstep and not realize it. You could have stepped on a toe that was very personal and you wouldn't have known. But suddenly they're being a little bit quieter. They're not looking you in the eye. Their responses to you are much shorter and snarkier. Maybe you overstepped and it's time to do a vibe check and make sure things are good.
Mhm.
And this is
Definitely.
part of being a good brat is you have to read the room, do your vibe check, and take ownership when you've done something that is too far.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. You have to be able to admit when you have gone too far. Same for doms, same for brats.
When I throw
This
in
is
there, that's a
extremely
that's a
important.
that's a big part of being, any kind of
A
partner
human.
in the scene.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to be doing that, really.
But this is
Yeah.
especially true in BDSM because we do play higher risk stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say especially in BDSM.
I also want to touch back on something you said earlier about how the end goal of being a brat is not necessarily submission, because and some people maybe might not be aware of this, but power exchange is not necessarily a part of every dynamic, and in fact,
Mhm.
it's not really a necessary part of the scene at all. You can have relationships that don't
Exactly.
have someone who is specifically dominant or specifically submissive, and you can still be bratty. There's plenty of things as Mouse mentioned earlier. You could be a brat and be other things, and you can be a brat and be nothing else if you want. You can just be a brat. You don't.
That's very uncommon. It's very uncommon to have a
It is.
standalone brat. Most brats who think they're standalone brats do lean one way or the other.
I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah.
I
I,
will
I'm,
point
I'm
out.
just saying. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be part of the power dynamic.
Mhm.
So the end goal is whatever you want it to be. Don't think
I will
don't think like
also
Mouse said that you have to be submissive at the end or you have to be dominant at the end. It's just a thing.
point out there are dominant brats and there are switchy brats. Bratting is not purely a submissive behavior. This is
Yeah.
very important to understand. One of my favorite things, and there's actually a sticker in my server about this. Doms are just brats with a god complex. That's one of my favorite things. It's not necessarily true. It's mostly a joke, but for some doms, this is extremely true. This is especially true if, in my experience, brat tamers. It's hard to be a brat tamer if you're not a little bit of a brat yourself. Bratty doms exist, and they are the hardest headed doms to deal with. And I love that because I too am remarkably hard headed. And, it's hard to beat me, and it takes somebody who is also a brat to beat me in anything.
I hate such a side note. Sorry, I hate that you're right because you're not wrong at all. Actually, I'm also very hard-headed, so like it's really
Yeah.
great.
I invoke the Fifth Amendment and my right to not incriminate myself in the court of law.
Well, we know that you are the biggest brat.
I will
already
not. I invoke the Fifth Amendment.
I've spoken to you enough. I already know. You can't hide it from me. It's too late.
Whether that's true or not, I invoke the Fifth
Yes,
Amendment.
yeah, my friend, we all know you pretty well now, so
Yeah.
Okay. I think now's a good time to start talking about divisions in brats and what that means. Everyone on board with me? Want to see where I'm going with this?
Just before you jump into that, you should know that Sapphic Switch says that you're right, and that's why you destroy her so much. Why she destroys you so much, rather.
So true. Sapphic, such a brat. I love you, Sapphic. I'm sorry. Sapphic Switch on Facebook. She's also in my server, and she messes with me all the time.
Oh,
she is.
awesome.
What do I call her? Sapphic the Subslayer? For a reason.
Subslayer.
I love it.
I love it. That's awesome.
She has a panty kill count. It's very high.
Oh man.
That's
yes.
Already.
Sorry, Sapphic. Outing you on podcast here. Anyway, I really want to talk about the divisions of brats. And as I've said earlier, almost every brat will tell you, oh, well, I'm a brat, but, I really just want to make my daddy happy. And, I don't ever want to upset him. So I only brat to play around. That kind of brat, in particular, that specific subtype who would say that is generally either a bratty little or a bratty slave or a bratty, why am I drawing a blank here? A bratty service sub. Those three in particular, the reason that I use bratty as an adjective is because I would not consider them true brats. Are they brats? Yes. Are they true primary brats? No. It's a different way of bratting. It's a different motivation for bratting. And within those divisions, they are primarily either a little service sub, slave, whatever their position in BDSM already is. They just add bratting to it. And generally speaking, they are not necessarily seeking attention, but they're seeking a reaction. They are looking for a reaction from their dom. Either they want daddy attention in the form of for a little, they want daddy to pay attention to them. They want punishment. They want something they've not been paid enough attention to. Generally speaking, this type of brat is doing the bratting just to get a reaction from their dom. And I have seen a lot of doms who misunderstand this as the only way to be a brat. I do think this is the more common way to be a brat. Most of the brats I would run into, in my experience, I have met a lot of bratty littles. A lot. And I love bratty littles. I think that is probably the most common brat that I've run into. I think that a lot of littles don't think that they're brats. They brat a little bit, but they're going, well, I'm not a true brat because I don't actually, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I do want to listen to daddy. And this is why I think that Liv here is a
I am feeling extremely called out.
Yes. This is why I think you're a bratty little, and this is why I think this is your division.
Yeah, I'm definitely very much like the type of person where like I don't want to engage. It's definitely, like I said, like very much for a reaction. Like if I haven't had much attention that day or something like that, like it really depends for me. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling very called out. I feel like it's very, very much how I am. And it feels nice to like have a title to it because it kind of always felt like I never really knew. I mean, honestly, even still being so new to this, it's hard to know exactly where I stand on the scales and everything of where everything's at. But that one definitely,
I will be clear, these are divisions that I have, sort of invented. It's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. These are divisions I think that need to exist in the community because the way that I divide this, I do it the way I do because it tells you a little bit about the motivation of the brat you're dealing with, what they're looking for, and I think it makes interacting with these brats easier if you know kind of where they sit. And there are probably a lot more divisions out there that I won't go over today. There's probably people who are sitting in the middle of a couple of them. But I think it's important that we have these divisions because brats usually divide themselves up into different types of brat anyway. If you go on Reddit, there are entire threads where brats are like, what kind of brat are you? And they do these divisions and they're all different. They're all a little bit quirky compared or, based off of who's talking. Mm-hmm. But for me, these are the big divisions that I run into. There's primary brats versus secondary brats. And the secondary brats are the people who I use brat as an adjective. They're bratty littles, bratty service subs, bratty slaves. Bratty slaves are always interesting to me because they are the most obedient of the bunch, but they do still brat. I've not seen very many of these, but I have seen some.
Yeah, I definitely feel like sometimes I have that as well, because like I said, there's times where like I say that I'm a brat, but then it's like I will literally do anything for my daddy. I
Mhm.
don't like I find it very hard to like talk back, and so it's a very weird area for me, because like I said, like these three of like the secondary ones are like kind of like, oh, I kind of relate to all three of those
There's
a little
more than
bit.
3. These are just the 3
Yeah,
that these are the most common ones that I see.
yeah,
These are the
and
3 secondary brat types that I see that
yeah,
especially in my server in the, admin community, I can tell you based off of my experience with certain brats what kind of brat most admin are.
I
If
yeah,
mean,
there's a
look,
bratty
just
admin, I
if
can
the
make
if
a I
the
can make a call.
if the definition
yeah,
of being a brat, or part of the definition of being a brat, or bratting, I should say, is turning things into a game. Mouse never said it has to be a hard game.
It doesn't.
exactly.
You're making your partner just have to swipe some colors around. It could be an easy game, and still making it a game. That's still bratting.
Mhm. Oh,
Exactly,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Bratting comes in a lot of different forms. Not everything is malicious complaints. I am big on malicious complaints. Not everybody has to do that. Sometimes it's just, being difficult. Well, I don't want chicken nuggets anymore. Sorry, daddy. I don't want chicken nuggets anymore. And then as soon as they go to put them away, just kidding. I wanted chicken nuggets. That's a little bit of light bratting for a little.
Yeah, and
Just
I
messing with
very
them.
yeah, and I very much do a lot of that kind of stuff with
Yeah.
my daddy. So like
Hmm.
it feels nice to kind of like, even though it's not a official title, it still feels really nice to like kind
It
of
gives you a
like,
little bit of recognition for your
well,
role,
exactly,
I
right?
think,
Because I was
which
like,
I think pretty nice.
yeah, like, because I've like for so long I've been so confused in this whole like getting into this whole kink community and stuff, and I think that's part of the reason why wanted to do this podcast was because there's so much that I'm learning. So it feels really nice to have that recognition of like, hey, I don't always feel like a brat, but I still am considered a brat.
Absolutely. And I want to be very clear that just because you aren't a primary brat, you are definitely still a brat. You are a brat, and I love you for being a brat. I want to be very clear that just because you may not be a brat all the time, you are still a brat. You are still part of our brat family. Brat Union welcomes you. Love to have you.
I
I would
appreciate
actually say the majority of brats in Brat Union, my server, are bratty littles. The overwhelming majority, I would argue. Um,
that.
it's just how it happens to work.
Yeah,
I will also talk about primary brats. I am a primary brat because this is just who I am. I am
yeah,
built as a brat. I brat without thinking about bratting. I brat when I'm half asleep. I just brat. That's just who I am. Even when I'm not feeling well, I brat. I
hmm,
am the division I give myself, I call myself a baby brat. I am baby. I'm also a brat. I also have, primal elements to my kinks and things like that. But
hmm,
what I would describe myself as, if you were to ask me, I would call myself baby brat. I am baby, but I am also brat. More than anything, I am brat. And for me, my motivation is going to be different than somebody who's a bratty little. I'm not
yeah,
bratting for a reaction. I'm just bratting to brat. If I'm pushing you, you'll know I'm pushing you. But generally speaking, I'm just playing. I just want to have fun. In
yeah,
a dynamic, I will push and you will know when I'm pushing. It'll be
hmm,
very obvious. It'll be more direct. It'll be more plainful. It'll be more poignant. And oftentimes it'll be more physical. Brats, true brats, primary brats as I call them, brat just to brat. They are not bratting for a reaction. They're not bratting for attention. They're not bratting because you did anything wrong. They're just bratting to brat. And I would say this is actually a slightly less common type of brat, but there are still a lot of us. In fact, I would say within the primary brat community, they're actually more likely to be brats who are just being bitches too. Because
yeah,
not all brats who are primary brats know the limits. It's
yeah,
much harder to know the limits when your impulse is to brat 24/7.
yeah,
This is something I had to teach myself, and I think this is something that a lot of true brats, primary brats struggle with.
hmm.
And within the primary brats, there are also subdivisions. I'm a baby brat. I also know of primal brats. I know of, service sub brats. They're, mostly brats, but they also want to go out of their way to be, service subs when they feel like it. Primal brats are, I think, one of the most fun because they tend to be very physical brats. They are push,
Mhm.
shove, scratch, bite your arm kind of brats.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of brats. There's a brat for almost every subdivision in the kink community. Um, there is no such thing, in my opinion, as a brat that's just a brat. Almost every brat has a kink that will give them a slightly different motivation or desired outcome for bratting.
Mhm.
When I'm bratting, I usually want daddy attention because I'm a baby brat.
Yeah.
But like I want rougher daddy attention because I also have the primal kink. It's a whole thing. Um, but with a primal brat, they're going to want an animalistic reaction. They're going to want to push you until your primal side comes out.
Mhm.
So it's going to be different for every
Yeah.
single brat.
Yeah,
And if you
definitely.
know the division of the brat that you're speaking to, what type of brat they are, it will
Yeah.
tell you what the desired outcome is going to be. It's going to tell you a little bit better how to interact with that brat.
Yeah,
And I think it's
definitely.
very important that we all know that there is not one type of brat. We are not a monolith.
Yeah.
Bratting is play, it is playfulness. So we don't all have, necessarily defiance as our goal. The end goal is
Mhm.
not always submission, but oftentimes our division, our type of bratting will help you figure out what the end goal is going to be,
Yeah.
especially on Facebook. If you're talking to a brat who is, primal goblin brat or something, they're probably a primal brat and you can make that association.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I never
They're
I
just
never
going
meant
to
Yeah.
that
tell you.
defiance was the end goal. Defiance is just the play. Defiance is turning it into a game. Defiance is just making it
Defiance isn't always how
not
you play,
easy.
though.
True,
Sometimes
that's true.
defiance, sometimes I'm not being defiant at all. Sometimes I'm doing exactly what you said,
Well,
just
yeah,
not the way that
malicious
you wanted.
compliance. Yeah, yeah, but then there's the
I
spirit and the
am
letter of the
very good
law.
at malicious.
You're following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of it. It's defiant in
Oh
some
yeah.
ways, depending on how
I
you look at it.
mean,
Oh yeah.
it still works though, right?
Oh, 100%.
It's
100% it does.
still bratting. Absolutely.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of different ways to brat. And I think that we have to be careful not to pigeonhole it all into defiance
Yeah.
or um, just being mean.
Well, and
There are
yeah.
situations where being mean is called for in bratting, but that is something that has to come with negotiation and communication and within the dynamic. Baseline bratting should not be mean.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is so much of like the misconceptions that I've been around, right? Is that like,
Hmm.
if you're not defiant enough, if you're not, if you're not all of this stuff, then you're not
Yeah.
a brat. You know what
Oh,
I mean? And it's
absolutely.
like, yeah, it's just yeah,
I mean, it's the
um,
same. It's the same for anything like beyond basic like flirting when you're communicating with someone. You shouldn't be
exactly.
engaging in any kind of behavior without understanding that that's what someone wants or that's what someone's okay with. Like I would never
Mhm.
like message someone and just immediately start like humiliating or degrading them unless like they asked me to. Like that's
Do
a
you have any
Yeah.
idea how
conversation.
often that happens to me?
Oh, I believe it. I've seen
Yeah,
and on
I
FetLife,
I
there's a lot
believe
of
that.
profiles that literally state straight out, do not message my profile like starting with that shit because I won't
Well,
respond.
I
And that's very
yeah,
I
common.
am
I
openly and not secretly not into degradation. It's not my thing. I can handle degradation with a little bit of praise mixed in, but if you come at me calling me a slut and a whore, you're just going to end up in a world of pork 'cause I'm way meaner than you are.
yeah,
You're going to find out real fast. I am way meaner than you are if you come at me like that.
yeah,
And people do this all the time.
yeah.
They find out
Oh,
I'm a brat and they assume that I want to be degraded.
And
I
the thing
don't.
is, that is legitimately just straight out immediately breaking boundaries. And it's breaking
yeah,
boundaries because boundaries were never set to begin with. They never had a conversation with you.
Hmm.
You never had a conversation with them. No one knew what the boundaries were. That was never set. And by very definition, then you were then breaking that boundary because you never discussed it beforehand.
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Um, God, there was something else I was going to say that I thought was pretty important. I just blanked. Yay, ADHD.
I hate it when I do that.
Yeah, I had something else that was kind of important, and I was waiting, and I forgot.
It's almost like you have the attention span of a mouse.
Actually, I will have you know, it is the attention span of a hamster. Thank you. It's not much different, but at least I've got a little wheel to spin, so thanks.
Yeah,
Fair,
you
fair,
need the
fair.
wheel. Oh my
Sapphic
god.
says you probably saw Sapphic join Twitch chat and then lost all trains of thought and gives you finger guns, which is very fair.
Ah, yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Sapphic is very distracting, I'll give her that. Let me see. I'm still trying to remember what it was. We have something that I think Liv said that I was trying to bounce off of.
Well,
Oh,
I
I
asked
also
you-
haven't discussed bratty switches yet.
Oh yeah.
Even when a bratty switch is playing sub, they still have that dominant side that is just there under the surface that makes them extra dangerous as brats.
Mm-hmm.
I will say right now, if you're dealing with a bratty switch, you're in for a ride. They will butt heads with you just because they do have that dominant side right under the surface, along with that bratting. They are dangerous.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this before we started recording. Bratty doms are a thing. And my saying is, as I said earlier, all doms are brats with a god complex. Bratty doms are very difficult to deal with at times. They're personally my favorite because I enjoy butting heads with a dom. I enjoy the verbal warfare. I enjoy the butting of heads. I enjoy the battle of wits. They can be very difficult to deal with if this is not something that you enjoy.
Mhm.
So just be aware, bratty doms definitely do exist. And I especially find bratty doms to be very prevalent in brat tamers. Also, brat tamer, a bit of a misnomer. You're not actually taming a brat. And I'm going to quote another Facebook page, Primal Caregiver Daddy, and what he said on my profile the other day. You don't tame a brat any more than you tame a lion. A lion tamer doesn't tame a lion. They work with the beast.
Yep.
And I think that's important
Yeah.
to understand. You are not taming a brat. Your goal should not be to break the brat. Your goal should not be to stop the bratting. Because if that's your end goal,
yeah,
you're
you are
supposed to handle it.
misunderstanding. Well, if that's your end goal, you're just misunderstanding what a brat is. Most brats are bratting either for attention or they're bratting because it's their personality. Either way, breaking that out of a brat is problematic and terrible practice.
Brat
Yeah.
partner
If your
would be a better
goal,
term.
brat partner is a good one. Yeah. I don't really care for the term brat tamer. I use it just because it's the word out there, but I don't think that it's an appropriate term for what it is to be with a brat as a partner or as in a dynamic.
That would ruin it too, because because I like brats, and if I was with a brat, I wouldn't want him to stop bratting. That was like what you removed part of the fun.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big thing. And one of the other things I mentioned on my brat post that I made earlier this week, if you are telling a brat they only get praise if they behave, you are telling that brat that they do not deserve praise for being themselves.
Yeah.
Praise your brat for bratting sometimes. If they do a really good job screwing with you, congratulate them. Recognize the game. You have to actually appreciate your brat for being a brat sometimes.
Yeah.
If you're only praising a brat when they're not being themselves, you are a problem. Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Yeah.
Like, I am a majestic, glorious, and talented brat, and I deserve praise from you, and you owe it to me. If you want to be with me because I'm a brat, praise me for being a brat too. When I'm doing something that's really fucking funny, I deserve praise for it.
Yeah,
I don't want to be praised when I'm being boring.
No, exactly.
It's the most dull thing I've ever heard. You're telling me I only deserve praise when I'm doing exactly what you said to do? What if I said no or did something really funny to avoid what you said? I think I deserve praise for that.
I agree.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm going to get punished for it. Sure, I know I'm going to get punished for it, but
no. Yeah, at that point, it's basically you know what, you beat me, you win, great job, I'm proud of you, type of thing. You know.
Yeah,
it's
well, like if I successfully distracted you from punishing me about something all day, I think I deserve respect for that. Because I
Yeah.
somehow managed to distract you from punishing me for a whole 24 hours.
Yeah,
Why am I
that's
not getting praise for that? That was clever. I should get a reward for that. I mean, I know I'll get punished, but come on, give me a little bit of praise. That was funny.
yeah, exactly.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
if I have managed to do something like that, that is me being good at exactly why you wanted to be with me.
Well,
Mhm.
I think some people, because part of it is that some people, just probably don't understand that nuance. But then there's definitely like a large part of the community that just takes dynamics and things so seriously that they're
Hmm.
probably not ever going to understand that humor and never going to be able to take a step back and be like, hey, that's funny how you did that. you know, like
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
I'd
have
never
to
be able to give you
have.
props for it.
If you don't like brats, don't be with a brat. If you don't enjoy bratting, you're not a brat tamer. Stop
Yeah.
it. Stop
Yeah.
trying to go for brats when you don't respect the brat. If you don't have respect for the fact that this person will play with you, that they will pull tricks on you, that they may pull some really clever tricks on you that you may be like, damn, I feel like an idiot. You're with the wrong partner. You shouldn't be with a brat if you can't respect them for being a brat.
Yeah.
And this is something I see a lot of. The number of, DOMs who've shown up in my DMs like, oh, well, you don't deserve that because you haven't been good. I'm like, I have been a fantastic brat. Thank you very much.
You're like,
Like,
I
I
am
have been
the.
excellent.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Liv.
Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say because it
No, I was
confuses
gonna
me.
make the smart ass remark. I'm like, well, I mean, you are definitely living your ideal life after all. Being a brat and all, just living up to your name and such. So I mean, yeah, props to
Oh,
you.
yeah. Yeah, I am a brat queen. I am the president of the brat union. I am This is another thing I want to bring up. There are brats who are stronger than other brats. And I don't mean this in a judgmental or a hierarchy way. There are brats who just don't give in as easily because primary brats, even among primary brats, we tend to be more difficult than, a bratty secondary brat that, is doing it for attention or for an outcome that they want. For primary brats, we tend to be a lot harder because this is just who we are. But then there's some of us who just really don't give in easily. I've heard the term alpha brat. I don't actually like that term. I think that is I just don't like the term alpha brat. I think it's just as gross as alpha dom. I don't like the term alpha brat. I've seen it going around a lot recently. I've been called alpha brat. I've jokingly called myself alpha brat before. I just don't like it. I think it's dangerous and toxic and not something we need to get into. But there are brats that are harder to quote tame than other brats, and it requires a dom with a similar force of will and a
Mhm.
similar level of brattiness. You have to be able to butt heads with somebody who is of the same level of hard-headedness for a good match.
Yeah.
I could not be with a dom who I could just bowl over. Couldn't do it. If you weren't a challenge to me, I just wouldn't do it. It wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah.
What's the point of the game if I could knock you over in my sleep?
Mhm.
With brats, you have to find a brat that is the same energy as you. If your
Mhm.
brat is a stronger brat than you, you're probably not going to have a good time. You're going to feel emasculated, possibly you're probably going to feel threatened. It's just not going to be enjoyable for you as a dom. Same with a brat. If a
Mhm.
brat is dealing with a dom that is much meaner, much brattier, and has a much stronger force of will, and they are wanting to be in this relationship as a brat rather than, a service sub or a pure submissive, they're going to be miserable. If
Yeah.
you are intending to be in a relationship with a brat, you need to find a brat whose energy you match it perfectly. Not
Yeah.
necessarily perfectly, but close enough that it's not going to feel like a battle of,
Yeah.
you know, wills where one party is just completely flooring the other. It should feel like you're constantly butting heads with an equal match.
Yeah,
Mhm.
If it's
just to throw
not,
it out there,
Definitely.
reconsider.
And just to throw it out there, it's not like a negative, like it's no one's fault. Two people can just not mesh, you know. If someone
Yeah.
is harder than you're expecting, it just doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. Or if someone's harder than
Mhm.
you're expecting and you want to work on it and get to that level where you can butt heads with them, that's fine too. There's nothing negative about that. That will
Yes,
happen. You know, not
exactly.
every
This is
relationship, not every dynamic will work.
exactly. Same thing. There are people who are just naturally more intense than others, and there's nothing good or bad about that. There's nothing inherently moralistic about that. They're just people who are more intense than others. You can tell they have an intensity about them. That does translate over to being a brat or being a sub, or being a brat
Yeah.
or being a dom. If you have that level of intensity, you will bring that into your dynamic. And sometimes people who are super intense really have to find an equal intensity partner when bratting is the goal of the dynamic.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be with somebody who doesn't match your intensity level without feeling that there is an inequality there.
Yeah.
And
And again,
some
like
people don't
Will
want
said,
to.
this is not a good or a bad thing. It is fine no matter where you sit on the intensity scale, but you will notice that there is a disparity if you're with somebody who is not of the same energy level.
And this
Yeah.
comes back to, I think we also talked about this last week too, is and if you're not comfortable making that change, if you don't want to make a change to like match up with someone better, don't. It's fine. That person's not for you. Move on. There's over
Yeah.
7 billion
Mhm.
people on the planet. Find a different dynamic, find a different relationship. You know, some people want to be laid back. Some people are easy to roll over and they don't want to change. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people will come on a podcast and do an hour-long show, you know, telling everyone the information about brats because they're such a good brat that they want everyone to have the tools to play with them better. That's fine too. We
Mhm.
understand that. Like Mouse did today. That's great. She's self-reporting this entire episode, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great stuff.
Well, it's a bit more than self-reporting. I have been a brat for 15 plus years now, and
Oh,
I have interacted with literally hundreds of other brats. Just I have years of experience working with brats. I tend to take brats under my wing as much as I can because there is a negative connotation. I am all for rehabilitating the image of bratting. And I'm also very big on I want other brats to learn the limitations, what they can do, what they probably shouldn't do, and I don't want them to be preyed on by predatory quote fake doms.
Yeah.
no,
I
I
have spent
think
a
the
lot of time with a lot of brats, and over the years, I have developed these divisions, and I've done it just from years and years of observation and experience with brats. So I
I
wouldn't
think
necessarily
some of
call
the
it self-reporting, but there are nuances that
well
I have
well
picked up on.
self-reporting is in you're giving everyone the tools to interact with you better, you know. But
Yes.
I wouldn't say, I don't know, because this is part of just maybe a lived experience difference here, because I wouldn't say brats have a negative connotation, but then a lot more of my experience with the BDSM community has been in person. And in person I've met lots of brats at different events and at munches, and I've never really been given the appearance or the opinion, except for online, that brats have a negative connotation.
Disagree with you.
Well, again, like I said, this is part of the lived experience difference. I have seen it online.
I've
I know brats have a negative
I've
connotation
seen it in
online.
person too. I've seen it in person too. Older generations tend to have experience with the smartass masochists and early forms of bratting where there was less attention on not being a bitch. Because older forms of brats and older presentations of brats, a lot of them were bitchy and problematic and difficult. And a lot of the people I have seen and heard from that really had negative views on brats were from the older generation. They were boomers. They were people whose experience was 30 years plus in the community. And some of these people are, mentoring new DOMs coming in and teaching them that brats are these awful, difficult to deal with people. And a
Yeah,
lot of people I'm finding that have gone through these like mentorships with people who have been in the community for 30, 40 plus years are coming out of that with opinions about brats that are a bit unfair. I actually just had a guy on my page a couple of days ago who was, 30 years of experience basically telling me that brats were the worst kinds of subs. I banned him because like I wasn't going to sit there and deal with that. Why would I deal with some weird 30 plus year guy that just was trying to diss me and my entire personality because of his opinion, I just banned him. I didn't care, but it is something that you do run into. I've run into it in real life. I've run into it online. And a lot of it that I see is misconceptions that linger from older generations where bratting was just becoming recognized over that of smartass masochists. And I did not mention much about smartass masochists. I really don't think there's a huge difference between them and brats. I think, there is the understanding that smartass masochists tend to be a little bit more of masochists necessarily.
Yeah.
Not all brats are masochists. But yeah, I would say that SAMs were kind of an early precursor to brats, and brats kind of developed out of that. Would you agree with that, Will?
I don't know. See, that's a thing that where I've never had that experience. I mean, maybe I've been around some older members of the community, but I've never heard those things. But then
I would
I'm not.
also say you've lived your experience as a dom rather than a
Yeah,
brat.
that's what I was about to
So
say.
these
I'm
are
not a brat.
things
I don't have
that you
conversations
may
about
not
me
have
being
been
a brat. Exactly.
exactly. I think that this is something that your experience as a dom may color your experience with how brats are perceived because you may not necessarily notice when a brat's getting the side eye from an older group of, you know, kinksters. Like there is just a negative connotation that exists, and brats are more aware of it than doms might be.
I think
One of my
I've also
very good
been
friends,
I'd say I've also been very, very lucky that most of the circles that I've been part of and had the great opportunity to, uh, you know, go to events and do things with, always been very, very, very much on the nicer, safe space kind of
yes,
side of things to the degree where,
hmm
it was very important that no one was being mean and normal, outside of a scene, where that was agreed upon. Where outside of that, everyone was being very kind to everyone else and no one was
yes,
being derogatory or mean in any kind of manner to anyone of any kind of age that was part of that group. So I have mostly had the luck in just knowing some really great people. Part of that event that I go to, Pensick, that I'm talking about, a lot of the folks there are like that, and so that's where a lot of my experience comes from, that event and the circles there and the people I've
hmm
met there. And yeah, it's very much no, we don't do that there, basically. So
I
I've
do
just had the
have
luck
a
to have kind circles.
I do have a personal experience I want to mention. I found out recently that a friend that I have had for 15 plus years was also into BDSM. We had no idea. We just happened to, or he happened to share something from his OnlyFans, and I was like, "Well, that is kinky as hell." That it was just a photo, but like I could tell immediately, like, "Oh, that is BDSM." So finally, I broached the topic, and indeed, he was into BDSM. We'd been in BDSM he was in it for less than I was. But during our conversation, he said something about, I don't think I could ever be with a brat. They're just awful. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, oh, brats are just awful. And I was like, I, I'm a brat. Like, you've known me for years and you have known me to be a brat. And he's, well, I didn't think you were a brat. And I explained to him that
What?
half of our conversations where I was poking fun at him or just being, sassy, like that is all bratting is. And he was very surprised to learn that. And I brought him into my server to meet brats and interact with brats. And all of a sudden, Brat Tamer is moving up his BDSM list of kinks that he has.
Hmm,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess maybe he
I
interesting.
just
think that there
defined that
is
differently or something, because yeah, that's I don't how do you know you for more than 5 minutes and not know that you're a brat? I don't know.
okay. In real life, a lot of people actually think I'm a dom. It's hilarious. I am the subbiest little sub that ever subbed, but
Mm-hmm.
I have extreme confidence, and people are intimidated by me. I am, 5 foot 1 inches of fury. Apparently, people think that I am scary,
Can't relate
and
to
it's
that.
funny. It's so funny to me. Like I will stare down at a man 3 times my size and intimidate him just because I'm not afraid. I have no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. I have many stories. Like I do stupid shit because I have no sense of self-preservation. Somehow, through sheer force of will, I am alive. I have no explanation. I really don't understand it either. Fate is on my side or something. Somehow, I am alive despite all the stupid things that I have done. I have no sense of self-preservation, and people are intimidated by me. Most of my real life friends who have found out that I'm into kink thought I was a dom.
You have a strong personality, and I think people just automatically confuse that as meaning you're going to be dominant and in control. And that, those two things are not
Yeah.
necessarily linked whatsoever at all. I mean,
I end up
I
being
don't.
in control of a lot of things in my real life. Like, I usually end up being the president of whatever I'm involved in. I usually end up being placed in charge of things because people mistake my confidence and my personality for somebody who likes to be in charge. And the truth is, I don't. I don't even like being a center of attention, but I end up there.
I mean,
Just,
I understand that because
weird personality.
I am like the same but opposite because like I tend to be. I mean, I can rise to the energy of whoever I'm with, obviously, but
Yeah.
I tend to be very laid back. I don't think I
Yep.
have a super strong personality or force of will. But then when I'm in a scene, I'm a control dominant. I'm all about that control, that power exchange. That's my big thing. So then you get to the bedroom, and I am all about that control. So
You and
I've
me
had
both, my
people
friend.
assume, yeah, I've had people assume that I'm kind of more subbyish, and I am absolutely 100% the opposite. So
Like,
I get where you're coming from with that. We have more chatters, by the way. We have people agreeing that with you, Mouse, that it is stigmatized amongst the older kinksters. And then the Kill Me King, my friend Harold there, also mentioned that talking about the old guard is hard because you could not talk so openly about things like this 15 years ago. And it's also, probably in certain areas, very specifically, there's going to be areas of communities where, it's far more stigmatized, and it could just be, around the areas that you've been in too, those communities could have just been much more against it than some other
Yeah,
places, stuff
exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
I think there are regional differences in the acceptance of breaths. I think that there is a huge age gap in like modern acceptance or modern approaches to brats. They can still be stigmatized, but the old guard tended to be much more brats are awful. Smartass
Yeah.
masochists are the worst. Brats are just going to be, difficult to deal with. They're going to be confrontational. They're going to
Yeah.
be oppositional no matter what you do. And that's really not what it looks like on the ground. Brats just want to play. And some of us want to play rough, but it is, at the end of the day, just a game. It is seeking fun.
Yeah.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, it doesn't surprise me terribly because I think, especially with the older generations, not to get into, any super political stuff here, but gender roles were a much bigger thing for people of
Yes.
older generations, obviously, and people who were submissive being bratty was, obviously outside of the traditional role, if you want to quote unquote that
Yeah.
term.
Yes.
So yeah.
What?
I
Yeah.
think you're
I
dead
mean,
on accurate there. I think that that's probably part of the stigma that exists.
well,
Because
and
I would not have done well as a 1950s housewife.
No,
I would have
not at all.
definitely stood out.
yeah.
I am
You
not
would have
the
been
type
on the
of person.
honeymooners with someone going bang whoosh straight to the moon is what you're saying. And yeah, I think that's accurate.
Exactly. Mhm.
Which is
It's
unfortunate because bratting is fun.
definitely a generational difference. And my personality, whether I wanted to be a brat or not, it was just who I was. I came into the scene as a sassy, teenager, and everyone was like, "Oh, you're a brat." And I was like, "I am? Cool. Guess that's what I am." Didn't ask any
Yeah.
questions. I learned about it on the ground as I went. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And I have been a brat for a number of years. I have learned what a brat is, what we do. I have, after years of observation and personal growth, I've realized that brats want to play, that there are different types of brats. We brat for different reasons. We have different motivations. We have different end goals. I've seen a lot of the stigma and a lot of the negative assumptions. And part of my personal mission is to rehabilitate the image of a brat. We are just playful. We just want to play. And if that is more recognized, I think that, getting along with brats and, quote, taming a brat is a lot easier to do.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right. Now we are 20 minutes past our normal time. Mouse, you have anything further on this topic, or do you think we're good?
I think I hit pretty much everything that was on my to do list. Is there anything else you guys think I might have missed or might have wanted to cover that I didn't?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. You got it all. So
Pretty
new to
happy. I think we
everything.
covered a good bit. Has anyone here feel like they might have a different perspective on what bratting is or looks like or how to identify different types of brats?
I definitely feel better about my
most
situation
definitely.
and everything like that. I definitely feel a little bit better now, kind of understanding where I stand and, kind of stuff like that. So I was really looking forward to this episode. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
My
Like, when you
goal,
said that you were doing Brats, I was like, yes, please, I need to be a part of this because I need
my
to know.
goal is that every single one of us should at least be able to think about one brat in our lives that you may
Yep.
now have a better idea of where they sit on this spectrum, what their
Exactly.
motivations are.
Yeah.
Has everyone here like thought of a brat that I know Liv's already got herself? Has Will, Drow, do you guys think of a brat now that you think might be, more on the bratty little or bratty service sub versus like a primary brat? Or can you think of like a brat that would fit somewhere different on the spectrum that you would have
Yeah,
originally thought?
I can think of several that fit in different sides of the spectrum. So that was actually very educational. I appreciate it.
I think I
The
already
reason I
had
think
those
this is
divisions.
so
I think in my
important.
head. So
Yeah,
to a
I think
degree.
it's important though that we start making this a more common discussion so people, Will,
Yeah.
you have a lot more experience. I think it's important that those of us who have this experience, we start using terminology about brats that helps make it clear for people coming in, because there shouldn't be such a huge learning curve. Liv shouldn't have had to feel so overwhelmed by trying to figure out where she sat on the spectrum. It's not
Yeah.
fair. It's
No.
not fair to brats, and it's not fair to new brat tamers. I think it's
I'm-
very important that, maybe this is a little bit simplistic, but I think that it's very helpful to getting to understand bratting and how bratting works.
No, I'd
Yeah.
say there's always been an issue in the community with people jumping into it because the pool. I mean, and I don't want anyone to feel nervous about it or like scared of it, but the pool is very deep. The waters are very
It is.
deep. There's and
Oh,
there's
yeah.
nuance to all of it, and everything's
Yeah.
gonna mean slightly different things to different people, and so it's always been. I'm going to say maybe the biggest struggle with the scene in getting people to actually, learn about it and educate themselves and really take the time to sit down and discover what they want and what they are, only because it is so difficult, especially,
Yes.
getting good information,
Yeah.
in the right places and being able to find that
My
because there's just so much of it now too.
Well, and I think
one of
Not
the
all of it's good.
problems. Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
One of the problems I have is that there's so many different recognized divisions of DOMs and subs,
Yeah.
but brats have always just been brats, and I think that that is an oversight, something that we as a community should have addressed much sooner. Because brats have known for a long time that there are different types of brats. Why aren't we recognizing there are different types of brats? We can recognize that there are service subs, slaves, just regular littles. And why can't we look at brats and go, okay, there are different types of brats? We don't have names for the different divisions of brats, which is why I have given these names to them. Whether or not this is the names that stick, I don't know. But I think, making these divisions is just overdue. Like,
Yeah.
if it's something
I
that
don't
we
disagree.
start to use, I think it'll make it easier to understand how to interact with these brats. You're
Yeah.
not going to interact with the same way with a little as you are with a service sub, as you are with a slave. Once you know their title, you know how to interact with them better. And I think the same is true of brats.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a baby brat like myself, you're not going to treat them the same way as a bratty service sub.
Yeah.
We're just not the same. We're not going to have the same motivations. We're not going to have the same intended outcomes. And you need to adjust for that if you're going to
Yeah.
successfully interact with us.
Yeah.
Yep,
So this
I
is
agree
something
with
that
that
I think
completely.
is really important. And I think that it's something we need to, I'm not necessarily saying my definitions need to be what's pushed, but I think that this is something we need to push for, is recognition that there are so many different types of brats and that they should be recognized as such.
Yeah. No,
I
I
can agree with that.
definitely agree with that. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like,
All right.
It's a change
So,
I would really like to see in the community.
yeah, definitely.
and we will, I guess, try and make that happen because I agree with that completely. But I guess we will move on before we finish this episode. I would like to set what we're doing for the next episode. The third episode of the Starbright
Boy.
podcast will be July 7th, same time, same place. Drow, Liv, do either of you have a topic that you'd like to talk about and would like to take that episode?
Mm,
You don't have to take it over as and run it, Liv. If you have an idea of something you just like to talk about, and then we'll just talk.
okay. I don't know. Like I said, there's so much to this, like to the whole lifestyle that I'm like, oh my goodness, like there's so much, and I'm like, okay, what do I want to? What do I don't know.
What were some of the ideas we brought up last week? Because I know Liv jumped on a couple of those.
She did, and I don't remember what they were.
I don't
either.
remember.
We were talking about TPE, general power exchange dynamics. What else were we talking about? There's a couple of different ones that we were
There
big
were
on.
several.
We were talking about like things like breath play and shibari and things like that.
That's
Mhm,
one
mhm.
thing. I think is that how you pronounce it? Shibari?
Shibari.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like rope and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
rope play is a very deep topic. Yes.
That's
It is.
definitely
That's a
something
big
that
one.
I'm more interested in learning about, because that's something that like Daddy and I have like considered trying, but again, like it's just something we haven't gotten around to yet, but it's something that I definitely want to try, and it would be interesting to like kind of have more information on it before going into it, kind
Right.
of thing.
That was, and that's actually probably one of the biggest things that you should research before doing. That was actually the thing that I brought up
Exactly.
with
Yeah.
rope play was the you have to accept the
Mhm.
risk that you can get permanent nerve damage if someone
Exactly.
doesn't know what
Yeah.
they're doing. Because so
Yeah,
that
exactly.
we could discuss rope play next week. Is that good with the rest of you? Drow, Mouse, you guys good discussing rope
I
play?
think that's a great topic to start with because a
Okay.
lot of people can get hurt if we don't talk about that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Cool.
agree 100%.
Okay. So in 2 weeks, Friday the 7th of July, we will discuss rope play. And I hope you have all enjoyed today's episode. And this has been the Starbright Podcast, episode 2. Have a good night, everybody.